Hello everyone, welcome to another video of Make Evan Happy. I'm Evan and today we'll be dissecting Ready Player One. Let's jump right into it. The plot of the movie is about a game developed by James Halliday and Ogden Morrow where anybody can enter by wearing a VR goggles and a haptic suit, the name I don't know of, and be whoever they want to be and do whatever they want to do. James Halliday has then hidden the source of all his wealth into the game so that whoever wins the game will inherit everything that he owned. Because that's what everybody's dream is, right? To become rich while playing a game. The movie revolves around Parzival, who is the main character, and his four friends Artemis, H, Daito, and Sho, who embark on this quest to win the game and inherit the treasure before the evil villain, maybe not the villain, the antagonist, Nolan Sorrento, who wants to win the game and inherit all the treasure all for himself. The cast of this movie is Olivia Cook, Ty Sheridan, Ben Mendelsohn, and Simon Pegg, and also a very brief appearance of Letitia Wright.
All right, who knows?
If you know the answer,
Many of you might know Letitia Wright from the Black Panther or the MCU, where she played Shuri as Black Panther's sister. It's unfortunate that she had a very brief appearance in this movie, but ironically, she is now a bigger star than every one of them. Life. This movie is directed by Steven Spielberg, which automatically means that this movie is going to be good straight out of the box. I don't know why it's a law or a principle or something, but that's how it is. And this movie is no stranger to that. This movie is good. The reason why Steven Spielberg movies are always so good is probably because of this. My dad says that every Steven Spielberg movie is unique and is made based on something totally unheard of. Take for example E.T., Extraterrestrial, or Jurassic Park, or Jaws especially. They were all unheard of at the times and they are major box office hits. Even with this movie, it's fresh, it's different, not totally unheard of because we have VR goggles and VR games and all that, but this movie really serves that VR trend. I watched this movie for the first time way back in 2018 with some of my closest friends, and after watching this movie, they asked me what was my view about it. And at first, I was not a big fan of this movie and I didn't like it. And I was like, meh. But my view has changed ever since. The more I watch this movie, the more I find myself being weirdly attracted or drawn to it. Usually if a movie bores me or uninterests me, I watch it once or twice or maximum thrice if that's what my life has come down to. But I watched this movie multiple times, excluding the number of times I watched it to make this review. My response to the movie was kind of like Meet the Spartans, where you know that the movie is absolute shite but you still can't stop watching it. But don't get me wrong, this movie is much better than Meet the Spartans in every possible manner. I'm just talking about my behavior or my reaction to the movie. Ready Player One is a serious movie with some real thought given behind making it, whereas Meet the Spartan was like a backyard production of some wannabe director. But the main reason I think why this movie will do so well is because of the sheer number of throwbacks, callbacks, and Easter eggs hidden in this movie. I mean, the gamers, the geeks, the pop culture know-it-alls, this will be an absolute heaven for them. Like, I remember telling my friends, like, hey, look, I know that guy, or hey, look, that's Godzilla, yeah! Who are you smiling at? I also like how they developed James Halliday's character. Like, he was this typical gamer who is socially awkward, does not get along with people, who is cool in his own world, who looks sickly all the time and pale. Many people might not agree that this is a stereotype, but I enjoyed it and that's all that really matters. Now let's talk about a few things that I appreciate has been done very well in this movie. Starting with humor, I think that the comedy in this movie was enjoyable, appropriate, and maintained well with the comic timing and was not at all overbearing. In movies like this, it is sometimes very easy to get it all wrong and get the comedy all wrong, but this movie managed to hold its own. The virtual world in this movie is also quite impressive. Like the CGI team, the animations team has done an exemplary job in making the world as diverse as it is, and the various throwbacks and the Easter eggs that are hidden in this movie makes this movie way more fun to watch. There are also a few instances in this movie, like when you watch it, you will think, brilliant, why did I think of that? Like for instance, when Parzival wins the first key, he is now suddenly Parzival first to the key and he is a big celebrity. He has to wear, wherever he walks, he has to wear a disguise. And Clark Kent glasses become his disguise. This is a throwback to the Superman movies where Clark Kent removes his glasses and he's suddenly Superman, and he wears his glasses and he's suddenly Clark Kent and nobody recognizes him. Like, who knew? We knew, but you get the point. Now let's talk about a few things that I did not like in this movie. Number one, romance. Romance was introduced way too soon in this movie. Like, it was not even halfway through that Parzival went and expressed his love towards Artemis and told, I love you. What? Now, why I believe that this is a major shortcoming in this movie is because romance is a big native to Hollywood, and every movie be it action or be it even mainstream horror. There is hints of romance left in it, and that is why it is so easy to mess it up. And this movie has royally messed it up. Like Parzival had not met Artemis 3 times that he falls head over heels over her. The second problem I have with this movie is that this movie is set in 2045 and they expect us to believe that in 25 years this world dives into so much anarchy and chaos that they had to come up with a virtual world where everybody is friends there. Like many of you might say this, 25 years is a long time. A lot can happen in 25 years. You could grow 25 years older in 25 years. I don't see it. I don't see so much happening in just 25 years. But again, I am recording this in 2020, so what do I know? And the third problem I have with this movie are scenes that defy all logic. Like this movie is designed in a virtual world where whatever the actions in the real world are reflected in the virtual world. So there are scenes where people are seated on their seats and are playing the game, and there are people on the streets wearing VR goggles and playing. Now, how do you interact with the virtual world seated? Like whatever you do, running, jogging, punching, hitting, anything you will be doing through the seats. How do you do that? The fourth and final shortcoming I find in this movie were the dialogues. I mean, the dialogues were quite okayish and mediocre. Take for example the scene where Nolan Sorrento says he wants control over the most important economic resource of his time. He's talking about this game, of course, like he's a billionaire and he still thinks that this game is the world's most important economic resource. Like how? Rich privilege. This movie has been made with numerous characters and numerous scenes, all of which intersecting, because of which this movie is not going to be devoid of many of the loopholes and plot holes that arise. This gives birth to many questions in the mind, like if in the game the character could become anybody they want to be, why don't they just become Flash from Flash and Smaug from Hobbit: The Desolation of Smaug, and at once destroy all the IOI agents sent by the antagonist Nolan Sorrento? Like why didn't someone think of that? In the death race in the beginning of the movie where the rush is real, like a 9 o'clock Monday morning, how does H have time to communicate with Parzival during the race who's in an entirely different car? While we are in the subject of the death race, when Parzival has this epiphany to drive backwards, because that's how races work, and win the race, how come only Artemis sees Parzival driving backwards? Of all the races in the race, only Artemis sees him. There are even people in the stands and even they didn't see him going backwards. How does that work? In the first challenge of the movie, they say that the clue was cracked by someone. They didn't say who it was, they just said someone. Did they run out of creative juices to explain that a little bit more? Now, since the characters are in a video game and the players have to destroy each other to win their coins, my question is, why don't these characters just destroy each other all the time? Like, why do they have to go into specific games to kill each other and then get their coins? Why not just, while walking, destroy each other and then take their coins? Wouldn't that just be simpler? By the end of the movie, we realized that the curator in the game was Ogden Morrow himself, who was the creator of the game. And whenever Parzival and his team used to visit the curator to access the memory files of James Halliday, the curator was surprisingly always present. So how did that work? Was Ogden Morrow playing the game 24/7 or was it just a program? In the final battle when Artemis was wearing the IOI suit, how come nobody attacked her? How come when the IOI soldiers are killed in a certain pattern, the characters are also killed in that pattern? Like, how does that work? I give it that it is satisfying and quite eye-catchy to watch, but it defies all logic. My last and the most major question is this. From the beginning of the movie, we see that H's avatar is actually male and is portrayed as male. But by the end of the movie, we see that H is actually played by a female. Because, well, in a video game, you can be whoever you want and gender swap, why not? But in the Shining scene, you see H moving in to kiss that woman. So I don't understand is why would H want to kiss that woman if he's actually a woman in real life? Were they trying to reinforce that he's actually a man in the beginning of the movie and at the end go all surprised it's a woman, or were they trying to slightly sneak in the LGBTQ diversity in it? But those are the questions that boggle my mind about this movie. If any of you have a theory as to what the answers could be, comment right down below and I would love to hear them out. In conclusion, I can say that Ready Player One is a really fun and enjoyable movie with some breathtaking action scenes, courtesy of Steven Spielberg, and some great background score, courtesy of Alan Silvestri. With its own fair shares of shortcomings and flaws, with margin to improve, I would like to give this movie a 7 out of 10. So finally, did it make Evan happy? Well, I think it did. Thank you so much for watching another video of Make Evan Happy. If you like this video, hit the like button, and if you really like this video, hit the like and subscribe button. See you all in the next video.